Hi Juan, I thought it might be easier to answer your question with a video. So I'm working on lesson 2.1 of Master Your Memory course. Seems crucial. I'd like to take advantage of this lesson in order to learn new English vocabulary from the book I'm reading. So you're an English language student. My question is related to Memory Palace. So I'm wondering which would be the best approach to store long-term vocabulary when you're learning a new language and reading books, for example. I'm doubting about different approaches. Make a new palace for each book. Make an English library palace and place the new books in vocabulary into a concrete place on a shelf, for example. Make an English library palace and place new vocabulary like a dictionary ordered alphabetically. So there's a couple of different approaches that you can take here. So when I'm learning Japanese language, for example, or when I come across new English words that I'm trying to remember, I don't necessarily place them in a memory palace. So what I would be doing is just using the techniques that we've learned so far to attach the word and how it sounds to the meaning. That said, when I'm learning something like Japanese in a more systematic way, I might use a memory palace to place things like all of the Japanese fruits in one memory palace, or all of the all of the things like that you'd find in a hospital or something. So you can use memory palaces for that sort of thing when you're doing language learning. The other thing that it can be handy for, so I actually lived in Japan for a year. I didn't know memory techniques at the time. It was prior to me learning them. What I would do now though, if I actually lived there, would be I would probably have a semi-temporary memory palace that I would use for new words that I came across either when I'm reading or when I hear them, that I would place there so that at the end of the week or the end of the month, I could go back over those words and I haven't lost them, in terms of, it's kind of like having a running list. So you won't lose track of all the new words that you've come across either from people speaking or from in a book as you're talking about. So I think for you, there might be a few different approaches that you can take. Have a memory palace that you have for information that you come across as you're reading a book, or as you hear one in a lesson or something. Jot it down in your memory palace at each new location and then go over it systematically. But that's more just to hold the information in a place for long enough that you can review it and not lose any of the new information. Then when you're studying lists of words, then yes, maybe you'd consider also putting them in a palace. A palace is also just adding an extra link to the information as well. So I do know that some students like to, for example, if they're studying, the top 300 most difficult English SAT words, they put them in a memory palace. It's because it creates an extra link to the information. It's also because when they're sitting bored on a bus or, somewhere where they just, they've got a little bit of free time, they've got the list available to go through the information. So you can go back through the memory palace and re-go over that information. And I do that quite a lot at the moment because I'm learning Pi. So I'm trying to learn Pi up to the Australian record. And if I wasn't putting in a memory palace, obviously I wouldn't know where I'm up to go over. And it is the same with words, in terms of you want to be reviewing, going back over the information periodically to make sure that it goes into your long-term learning. And a memory palace is a good approach to doing that. So I hope that makes sense to you. I hope that gives you a little bit more information. If you did want to organise your notes and put them in a memory palace alphabetically, that's also a good way to do it, in terms of reading your books. You jot down the English word, you jot down the meaning, you get a big list of them. And then let's say at the end of each month or every few weeks, you put it in a memory palace, and you could consider doing that alphabetically. I don't think there's any real need to put it alphabetically myself, but it is, it is another option that you could consider.